Okay, hi everybody. It's Friday, May 4th. Happy Star Wars Day. Let me get underway with. I thought about putting a picture of Anakin Skywalker in here, but we've got a lot of mostly technical stuff to talk about today. A lot of sort of pushing the limits on what all the little component pieces of what we're doing, a little less big picture stuff. So one of the things that we did this week was install an overhead camera system for the Maps for the Blind project, which I'm abbreviating M4B. We could use a better acronym for that, but that's okay. So it's up there. The idea is that now we can use these large format maps that Matt put together this week in Earle. And so that's going to open up a lot of doors for us to be able to do that stuff. The tricky part was actually the laser detection. So Matt and I spent a little bit of time on that last night. I feel like I overwhelmed Matt last night.
No, I didn't feel overwhelmed. It was interesting watching because I felt like I was like watching some sort of hackathon where it's like, all right, make this program, you have like 20 minutes. Like very interesting to watch, honestly.
It turned out that we needed to get rid of the minimum area, which I think is kind of a hack. Matt came up with that, and it totally worked. I think we probably need to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit with that laser detector and try to make sure that we're not getting any false positives. It works, but I think it could work a little bit better. So we'll keep that as a task for you, and I'll show you a little bit more about the development environment for that, how you can, because I think what we'll do is we'll have two windows. One is going to be sort of like the actual camera view, and then the other is going to be whatever your image processing is, and then they can both be annotated with whatever lasers it finds. Okay. So then you can sort of see what the original is, what's going on. That should help. Okay. I did order 2 new cameras and laser pointers for the project, so those will be coming soon. The cameras have microphones, and what I'm hoping is that we can maybe experiment a little bit with speech recognition, so we can say more information or whatever to drive interaction with the system even further. So I think that'd be pretty cool if we can make that work. So Matt, if you feel like looking into, I think you've gotten the sense now that a lot of this stuff isn't really programming it yourself. It's finding the right Python library that already does that, right?
Well, there was stuff. If you remember that speech synthesis that I used with the QR codes, that actually has the opposite side of it, where it has a voice recognition.
Oh, great!
So
yeah, there's so much of that stuff. I imagine we really ought to be able to ship this off to Google, and Google will do it, and we'll get a pretty good result. So I expect that if you want to poke around a little bit and sort of work through a couple of examples and just give us a couple of good candidates that are going to be able to recognize anything.
Yeah, you would think there'd be some Google API to make use of it.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. I saw that they're starting to redo a little bit of their API stuff for maps. Okay. Another big sort of technical project was kind of centered around getting the Lidar unit capable of getting a more accurate 3D position in space. So formerly the system could only get X and Y or latitude, longitude from the GPS, and it wouldn't get the elevation information. So if you're going up a hill or down a hill, those locations in space are off, right? So if your program has to stitch those together, it seems like you'd be better off having it knowing whether it's going uphill or downhill to seed that. If we're really making a push towards some kind of instrumentation-based technique to integrate them rather than like a SLAM algorithm, then that 3D position is really absolutely key. So the new firmware can support that. The issue ended up being that we had to basically get the GPS to transmit that information, which then the LiDAR would relay. So essentially, the GPS is providing information to the LiDAR is repackaging that and saving it to these sort of network-based packets, and then we can pull those out. So anyway, the gist of it was we needed to make a serial connection to the GPS. So that in itself was a little bit tricky. The connector is not a serial connector, so I sort of had to hack something together. I've got a picture of that, I think, on the next slide. It was kind of a lot of work, and then we had to. So serial connections or COM ports are kind of old ways of communicating with devices. So you do that back with modems, but a lot of scientific equipment is still based on that kind of a standard. which is unfortunate. But a lot of stuff, you know, what now would be USB was before. So the SB is serial bus, universal serial bus, and its whole purpose was to sort of smash this old system of COM ports. And anyway, so we had to sort of go back to sort of 20-year-old technology to do that. I found RealTerm, which is a way of communicating with serial ports online. That was a nice program that helped out a lot. The gist was we needed to send this like little text command. So the way these things work is they're constantly relaying essentially a comma delimited string of information containing the latitude and longitude and everything. But you can talk to it. So you're not just receiving data, you can actually send data to the unit. So we needed to send this sentence, $PGRMO, GPGGA, 1, and then this *20. So this part at the beginning tells us what kind of a statement we're sending. So this is, I want you to enable this sentence that I want you to start transmitting. The next one is, this is the sentence that I want you to transmit, the GPGGA string. 1 means enable, so I could turn it on or I could turn it off or whatever. So 1 says turn it on. And then the *20 is what's called the checksum, and its job is to hash the previous characters into something so that it can tell whether it received the message properly or not. So if any of these got corrupted during transfer, instead of, you know, if there's noise on the line or whatever and it reads a X instead of an O, that checksum lets it compare and say, yes, that transmission happened properly. So this was actually kind of tricky to all put together.
Just real quick before we move too far, I understand the difference obviously between the hardware and software, but can you do a 30-second elevator on what firmware is? Because I don't quite get that distinction.
So firmware is like the operating system of whatever hardware you're working with.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yes. That makes perfect sense.
There is actually firmware like in a computer, right? So that's a bit of a stretched analogy, but mostly that's good. This checksum, by the way, I don't think I had a link to this, but I had to find a web page that would do the that would calculate the web page, or that would calculate the checksum. So I gave it PGRMO, GPGGA, 1, and then it told me what the checksum was, and I could put that all together when I sent it. So, a lot of stringing together, a lot of little pieces here. So
why did you have to kind of make this, jerry rig something? Do they not have a way to?
They do not. No.
Really?
Yeah.
But how do you do what you need to do otherwise? You're just not supposed to.
They don't figure that most people are going to want to mess with this. So when I was in communication with the guys from Velodyne, they're like, "Yep, this is what you do." They wanted me to buy, instead of hacking together this piece is a GPS, is a wire that comes to this GPS unit here. So it hooks onto the back in these 4 ports, and then that plugs in with this cable to your COM port. I actually had so I don't have, modern computers don't really have COM ports anymore. This one might not. They have USB ports. So there's like a USB to COM port adapter that plugged into this cable, and then so I pinned out. I had to pull the wires out of the GPS unit, so you can kind of put an X-Acto knife in and pull each wire out, which is something I learned when I've been doing a lot of the drone work. It's really handy because if you got the wrong connector, you can pretty much literally just pop it out of its old connector and pop them into a new connector. So it's not as hard as I thought it was going to be. It's just sort of, there's the pin is kind of jagged, and then there's this plastic piece that's sort of pressured in, so you just sort of pop it up and then slide it out. Super easy. So if you ever get to the point where you need to take a connector off, it's not as bad as it seems. So I just sort of pressure put the wires from the GPS unit on here, and then you have to supply power to it. So I had to cut a USB cable and hook that into 2 other wires. It was kind of this Frankenstein, but it totally worked. So I was pretty happy about it. If you're interested in any of this stuff, these are the specs for the GPS unit that we had. This is the link to the terminal software that lets you talk to it. That's the link to the checksum calculator, and then all of the stuff that's in here is filed into that folder. So archival data mostly. The next big project was trying to get the Emlid Reach work. So Matt and Sammy made some good headway on that last Friday. So over the weekend, I kind of tried to run with that a little bit and figure out how it all worked. So there are these two units, right? The idea is they're supposed to talk to each other. There was, so Earle, you had thought that some of the units had, it's called LoRa, which is a radio frequency that they could talk directly to each other. It turns out that these are too new or too old and didn't have that, so that's why we couldn't do it. So essentially, they have to both be online. So I set one up in the roof of my garage, hoping that would be little enough disturbance. Like, it's just a wood roof, so it's not too enclosing. It worked okay. I put that up there. The first thing I did was have it send the correction packets just over the network. So I opened up a port on my router, and then I could talk to that. But I did figure out how to get it set up as an NTRIP server. So NTRIP is sort of this internet protocol so that the network corrections can be sent. And the way it works is like there's a server, which is the unit itself, like the base station. There's what's called a caster, which is a server somewhere on the internet somewhere. And then there's a client. So your base station sends the packets to a server somewhere, and then that talks to the other unit. So that's what I've got it set up right now. And I could have done it the other way. It's just that now I don't have to have, it doesn't depend on my Wi-Fi at home, right? It's other than it has to send them up there directly. But at school, for instance, I can't open a port to that thing, right? So this is, if I want to put this thing on the roof, then I needed to send it to something that's open and accessible on the web. You know, it's never going to open up a port for me on a private IP address. I don't want them to. So this is free for now, which is great. At some point, maybe they'll start charging. But whoever is operating this stuff, so it's a group called RTK2Go, you can just set up these NTRIP casters for free. So that worked out great. So it's up there, it's running, it's sending those corrections now. So I drove around with the rover unit. So this is an example of one rover drive that I had. This is an uncorrected track. The unit itself is pretty good. You can see some interesting jumps. So like this one in particular is kind of a fascinating little like disconnect. I don't know what happened. But it's a little less accurate. I mean, this is uncorrected, so whatever. I'll show you some post-processing stuff later. I do have a request into the NIU network people to allow the hardware address that encodes a unique ID for each piece of hardware that's on a network is called a MAC address. And so I've made a request to enable those MAC addresses for the NIU network so that they can get on the Wi-Fi. Once we do that, then we can put it on a roof with a battery. I bought a battery, and we'll just stick it up there. And if it works, I'll probably buy a little like 5-volt solar panel, and it can charge my battery, and the battery can charge the thing, and we'll see how long it lasts off of that.
I got one we can use for now.
You got a solar power pack?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I got one in my car right now.
Right now?
Yes.
Well, once we get the email from, so that's our last thing. We need to get the MAC address enabled to connect to the Wi-Fi. But yeah, I'm down. We'll just set it up there and put a little sticker on there that says, in case of emergency, contact Tom Tingle. Ideally, these things would send corrections on the fly, right? My rover unit would be talking in real time to the transmitter, and it would be making corrections. You can also do this post-processing. I did figure that out. There's a program called RTK. Well, RTK Lib is the full suite of open source RTK correction software. It's pretty cool. There is an Emlid specific version of that, so I put the link in here. And it worked really well. So the way that it works is if the rover is talking to the base as it moves around, but it's also logging all of those correction details as it goes. So on both units essentially have copies. Well, the rover has all the copies of the base. So I can just pull off the logs, the original logs, the solution, and the correction packet. I can go back and post-process, which is more accurate, theoretically. And I should be able to do that with the like the National Cores data network, and I haven't done that yet, but I'll pull the logs from Aurora and try to correct it with that, because it's still a pretty awful signal in my roof. Like you get that satellite readout, and they're all in the red. So until we can get it on the roof here or whatever, like, I don't think the corrections are great. Like, they're okay.
So is that coming from the ATC center in Aurora?
ATC?
Yeah, there's an air traffic control center.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's that or something else. It might be.
What is that?
Yeah.
The same one that we connect to St. Charles for corrections?
Probably.
I don't remember him saying it was that. I thought it was something else in Aurora, but he said it was in Aurora.
Yeah, because there's a big Midwest ATC is run between split offices in Aurora and South Belgium.
Okay.
That's like pretty much the whole Midwest center control is there.
Yeah, I could
So
ask.
I would
Yeah,
think that.
at least told me. I just didn't have a reason to really remember. I guess.
I think they really want to have good use files because that's
Right.
what the airlines a lot of corrections with them, right? The system.
Probably.
So
So this it's not correcting it in real time,
It is.
but
It's both correcting it in real time and you can post-process it, which should be more accurate. I think it depends a little bit on how good your correction data is. So I think it probably doesn't matter if your base station has been established, but if you just like throw down a base station and start getting the corrections, like those won't be good until the base station has a good solution for itself. So for me, I think it probably doesn't, well, I don't know. I just probably put this up like an hour before I did the ride, so I don't know whether that was good enough. Another thing is that there are too many settings for this thing. I mean, I just don't know what half of this stuff does.
yeah.
It's ridiculous.
I mean,
So,
I'm curious, so I'll dig into it.
Okay.
I really
Yeah, now
like
that we got a
this
good
stuff,
start on
so-
it. Cool. So there's a benchmark out here. Let me orient myself out there. Shalou, when we talk later, I'll show you where this is, and you can use that as sort of a way to, you'll know exactly where that point is in real space. And so if you take all of your points from those, you'll be able to diagnose what's the error in your original GPS versus what's your error in the offset. So you can get a sense of where your error is coming from. Okay, so then the other cool thing that I want to do is get the Reach talking to the Lidar unit. So what I was originally going to do is just keep the GPS unit that came with the Lidar and use that. But I think what we should be able to do is just plug the Reach directly in and use that originally. So we're getting a differentially corrected signal in right at the start, which is, I think, the easiest way to do this. So I'm excited about that. I've ordered the pieces for it. They should be here pretty soon. The Velodyne people have been really responsive to me, so I was appreciative of their help.
I don't think I really responsible. I think they probably saw because I listened to who I was. They probably saw
yeah.
yours and like, oh, he must be getting the same people.
Yeah, maybe. This was kind of a fun one. So I don't remember why I got into this. Probably just had an idea one day, and Earle and I were talking about this kind of recently. So the idea was, with our 2009 LiDAR data, could we how do you attach color information? So most of the new LiDAR processing stuff can take like an aerial photo and integrate that into the point cloud, so that combine an aerial photo with the point cloud and you can theoretically colorize the points. Not perfectly, because it depends on how well the things match. And so, for instance, if, and it's going to be only whatever they can see from the airplane, so it won't penetrate, right? So stuff on the underside of a tree might get colored whatever it is that's on the top of the tree, which is probably mostly right. But what I wanted to do was reference it. So the LiDAR data comes from 2009, and what I wanted to do was reference that to a 2009 image, right? Because if anything's changed, if trees have been removed, if buildings have been added, whatever, I want that stuff to colorize properly. So the colorization itself was super easy. So LAS Tools has an LAS color program. You literally just go LAS color, input LiDAR file, input image file, output LiDAR file, and it's fast and like so great. Like it was just what you'd want it to be. If I can reinforce practicing LAS tools anytime you're working with LiDAR data, it is well worth the time you put into it. Don't mess around with it in ARC if you can help it. ARC is okay, but this stuff is just like way nicer. So yeah, what could take you half an hour to figure out how to do an ARC took 25 seconds. It was great. The catch was finding the hard part was finding the historical NAPE imagery. So I hadn't had I usually just pull the stuff off the national map, and that's the most recent stuff. So what I ended up finding, there's a bunch of like dead links. If you go through the web pages, it'll be like it's here, and then it's not there, and like you can't get it or you have to order it. Eventually, I ran into the right thing, which is this USDA gateway. All of the data for the NAPE imagery from 2003 to 17 is just posted on a Box account. You can just download it. Like, it's super easy. You just navigate through by, what is it, by year, by state, by county. By year, by state is the folder, and then the file name is the county.
Which ones are all on there?
Everything.
2017?
2003 to 17. It's like many terabytes of data. It's so cool. And interestingly, it was all distributed as SID files. So I haven't seen that in the wild in a long time. But they were using SID files. That actually was the problem. So you can see that this part of the LiDAR point cloud didn't get colored in. So this is the DK22 tile. I misestimated where the boundaries for that were. The problem is that when I converted, LAS color can only read a TIFF. So I tried converting the SID to JPEG 2000 or even a JPEG. It won't do it. These are distributed as county tiles, the NAPE imagery, which is really good for like not having to pick your way through little quads. But it's a really big file. It's like 30,000 pixels by 17,000 pixels or something. So it's a big file. When you write out the whole county, it writes it out in a format called Big TIFF, which we didn't talk about in class. But Big TIFF is for anything bigger than, I forget, 2 gigabytes or 4, something in like. And this was 6 uncompressed. It's like 250 megabytes as a SID file, like 6 gigs as an uncompressed. So anyway, long story short, you've got to pick out your little section. You can't just write the whole county file as a TIFF file. You're going to have to take a small piece of it. But it totally worked, and it's really cool. There's a link to the Geospatial Data Gateway. This is just a link to the files. So they're just sitting in a folder. It's great. I mean, ideally, that stuff would be folded into the national map, right? So that you access the historical imagery, sort of like you can do with the historical topos. But there are just so many, I think they're probably still trying to figure out what to do about it. But in the meantime, it's really easy. All right, Shalu, this is probably the one that's more important to you. Sorry. This is calculating the hand offsets. So the idea is if you are running around chasing primates, you don't want to go to where they actually are to take the GPS points. And if you go after they leave, like, it's kind of a lot of moving around. So if you can kind of sit in one spot and sort of observe and record the positions, that'd be great. So the question was, how do we do that? So in the field, and Matt, you've taken these before, these GPS offsets?
Yeah.
Yourself? Yeah. So there's a GPS unit, and then there's a laser rangefinder, and they're paired digitally. And so you hit the button, and it sort of does its magic, and it records the offsetted point. So that was my original idea for you. But it's expensive equipment, and it's kind of temperamental. So you know, all of those digital links have to sort of be set up correctly, or it's just not going to work, right? And I didn't want to worry about that. So I've been thinking low tech. So the low tech solution is to go take a handheld GPS, and then essentially the idea is to take a direction with a compass, like, I don't care what kind of compass, digital compass, regular old magnetic compass, either way, and then estimate the distance with a rangefinder. So,
sorry, that's just brilliant. It's simplicity.
Right?
I love it.
So thank you. I'm really excited about this one. I think, so I actually want to talk to Mitch about this and sort of see what he thinks. What's that? I haven't. No, I'd like to. And just kind of run this by him and see, because I don't know what people are doing for fieldwork, but I think this is this could be a good, I don't know what other people are doing. I don't really know your discipline that well, so maybe people are doing this already, but if they aren't, I think that this would really save people a lot of time. So I'm excited about this. I did some sort of feasibility work to see if this is going to work. So this, I'll show you where the base point is for the for it. This is just sticking my GPS unit on top of it. The unit itself will talk to, so it uses, I guess it's an older system called WAAS, which is Wide Area Augmentation System. It is a method of transmitting corrections to GPS data from satellites themselves. So the idea is so we're trying to get a very local correction happening between a transmitter here and a rover there. What this can do is it can take like that CORS network and then rebroadcast the connection down on a separate frequency. So it works almost anywhere. So when you set the unit down, it'll start averaging its position over the time. So that's, I think, the cool part is that while you're sort of sitting there watching, it's averaging your location. So your location while you're parked is going to get to be really, really, really accurate. So that's going to cut down on the error. That's better than sort of you know, walking up to a point and getting whatever the GPS signal happens to be at that time. The error on a GPS signal is going to kind of wander around the central point. So you've probably seen that before. Anyway, so that should work. This unit itself was off by, I think, 6 meters, which wasn't too bad. A little worse than I would expect. But this is a really old unit. So Earle has a unit that you can take out and try and see. And I don't know if Anthropology has handheld GPS units that you can. Not that you're allowed to borrow. Well, these things are pretty inexpensive. I mean, I bought this for probably $80 back in the day, and you can probably find them for not much different than that. So within the realm of just buying. You can borrow mine if you want. I don't care. It's been sitting in a box for a while. What's that? You need 4? Why 4? Ah, okay. All right.
Yeah. If you want to play with mine while you're here, it's fine.
Well, we can kind of Google around a little bit too. I'm curious to see how much they cost. The newer one should be better. A newer GPS unit is going to be able to take advantage of more satellite networks. So mine probably only does like the original US-based one, but now I think there are at least 5.
Yeah, I think it just
India for one. Oh.
Yeah.
So the more networks you can tap into, the more accurate your result is going to be. So a newer GPS unit will be better than an older one.
I don't know how that works. Like, I know mine is probably a couple years old. I got it for like 120. I think that one only uses GPS and GLONASS.
Yeah, that's
still, you know,
yeah,
improvement.
That's the Russian one?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to say, apparently I have expensive taste because the one on my wish list is $450.
Wow.
It's like top of the line, and also it's one of the ones with the emergency SOS response.
Oh wow, yeah.
I figure if I'm in the middle of nowhere in a foreign country, that's kind of helpful.
Did you see? I'm sorry, this is off track. But I kind of like GPS stuff. I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
They just came out with one. I think it was Garmin that uses the satellites, like that's using obviously location, but to send like text messages. So if you're in like a remote area,
neat.
You can use the satellites to send this little short like, I am here, I am live, you know, kind of.
That's what this one does.
Does it? Yeah.
What is that off of the Iridium network or something?
I don't know. I didn't look too much into it. I just saw like an article about it. I thought that was pretty cool. The E10. Okay, I have the 20s. Yeah, I have the 20. It's phenomenal.
I've used those for field work on it.
Yeah.
You might, I don't know what your budget is, but you may find, you know, having everybody have the same unit will simplify life a lot. Might be worth it.
I would pay attention though. I don't know if there's a big line between the 10 and the 20 for those. I think the 10 is black and white. I thought there was something about like you had to get the 20 or above if you wanted to import like topo maps.
But you wouldn't need to do that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, we can kind of let you go outside and run around and see what you think about the method and see if it's going to work. As far as estimating distance, Victor was going to come in today, and I don't think that he did. So he had a laser rangefinder. But do you know what distance you're going to be away from the animals when you're observing them? 10 meters. Oh, so that's pretty close. So I think if you can estimate distance, that's probably keeping it simple. Like if you can train yourself to estimate the distance between 30 yards and 20 yards, like it's totally fine, you know? Like more accurate probably than using something that takes a bad measurement and then you're off. So that's probably what I would do, just estimate ballpark. So GPS unit plus a compass plus some kind of a distance estimation. I made a spreadsheet for you, so it can all just be tallied in Excel. So you can just literally write down sort of those measurements as you go, right? And then plug that into a spreadsheet and just generate the points right off of that. So it's pretty easy, I think. Let's get past that. The last bit is I have these GPS loggers. So when I was doing a study back in the day, what?
Nokia made GPS stuff? Yeah.
No. Well, I don't know if they did, but I had these little units. So these are GPS units, and they're just loggers. So you can just like carry them in your pocket, and they're logging your position the whole time. So you can just turn these on. There's a little switch. So you basically just turn them on. You start looking for satellites. You put it in the window. They charge with a regular USB port. These have been sitting in my basement for 10 years. So I was like, well, the batteries are probably fried. I think they're okay. Oh, this is the one that I did replace. So this is the one that I did replace. So you switch that on, and then you give it a minute. Oh, I don't know if I actually charged this battery. But anyway, that's just the Nokia battery that I ordered. I think it was $5. So these would be kind of a backup. Like you could just, and they'll run for like 24 hours. So you could just put them in your shirt, and then you would know where you were throughout the day. So if you ever needed to recover logs, you could do that. You can. So it's got a little button at the top. You can just hit the button. Pretty handy. If you want to borrow it, you're welcome. Okay. So yeah, I was pleased to see we had some battery questions about the rangefinder. The ones that I spec'd out for this that were sort of the original part number were like $18 or something like that. So I was really happy to run across some internet forum where somebody was trying to do this. I won't really talk about this too much except to say that I did Robert Fritzen had a question about some Python code he was working on, and he showed me Selenium, which is a really awesome way of recording your interaction with a web page in a way that you can make Python code redo it later. So he was using it to like work through like a library-based search like LexisNexis or something like that, where there's no API that you can use to sort of interact with it. You can literally like program your mouse to like click on things and then harvest the data that comes back out. So if you're ever doing a web scraping project that you run into trouble, Selenium. I did the final purchases for the Maps for the Blind project. We ordered laser pointers, microphones, Kinect sensors, a big 4S battery for the drone. The propellers weren't in, so I just told her to skip those for now, which is why we are about $30 short, but we'll buy that on some other project. And 50 spools of cool white plastics for the printer. So it's going to be a lot of boxes. We'll just stick them in the corner. Make lots of maps. I'm lining up the potential purchases for the REU. There's transmitters, some other stuff to upgrade the system. And then this is what I really, really want to buy. This is the multi-rotor carrier board for the Pixoc flight controller. No ESCs are required, no anything. You're just going to stick the brain in there and connect the motors up. So it's going to simplify the design. All that wiring that is in there, like, gone. And it can support up to an 8-rotor system. So I'm stoked. Like, that's going to be, it's out of stock, but I sent them an email to see if they can, right? It's going to be cool. So I'm excited to kind of, I've been torn. So one of the things I found with the with the DJI stuff is that it doesn't interface well with a lot of the open source stuff. So like heads-up displays, like mission planner, all that stuff is a separate universe, right? And so I was gonna just get a DJI Mavic Pro for the RU, but now I'm thinking like, let's just double down on the open source stuff and do it that way, and see where we get, right? You've got a Mavic, we can compare. Instead of doing that twice, let's just keep upgrading.
That was kind of my thought, talking about compare the open source stuff to the Mavic and see what turns out and what because like you said, the Mavic doesn't play well with others. There's not as much expandability with it than open source can do.
Right. Yeah.
It's great for out of the box, but for the versatility.
Yeah. We've got tools to do. So we've got a monitor for the drone, so we can do heads-up display. I want to get the glasses, so we might put that on this project. The Fat Shark first-person goggles. I think that'd be cool. We've already got 2 camera units, so I've got a tiny one, and we've got another one that we bought when we bought the original drone. So we might as well. I want to get that first-person video up and running because I think that'd be pretty sweet. What? Maybe. Give me something cheap for that. What do you find me the cheapest solution and let's take a look at it. But I've got a budget for the whole thing of $2,000. Okay. But we can definitely. Yeah, it's pretty expensive. Yeah. Goals, we're doing okay. I don't want to go into too much detail here on some of the old stuff. The new stuff. Our AutoCarto talk is coming up soon. We're in a Tobler paper session. I've looked at the list. It's a lot of big shots, so I want to do this right. Start getting that presentation put together this coming week. So that's my top priority. Everything else is kind of going by the wayside. I do need to get Matt, you set up to do this. Once I teach you, then you can kind of be on your own and it can keep going. I also wanted to get, I talked to Earle about this, but I want to get a 1 to 1200 version of that map. Not any bigger than that one in extent, but zoomed in. So pick a 3x4 or 2x4 at 1 to 1200.
I started on it before that crashed.
Oh,
I also want to get document really clearly the files that are going into this so that we can always regenerate those. So I'll show you what I want to do later with that. Okay. More reach testing, I hope. Keep pecking away at that. I'm not going to try to do, I wanted to try to do a Lidar scan of leaf off, and there just wasn't time. So that's twice now. I've missed a window on that, and I'm annoyed at that, but I don't think there's anything we can do. So the scan with the Velodyne is kind of off the table until some of this other stuff comes together. I'd much rather rock AutoCarto than fool around with other stuff. But there's some minor stuff, RU stuff, trees of DeKalb stuff, and that water infill for Sammy. None of that is particularly long, so I just need to cross some stuff off the list. Okay, and lab party today, 3-ish. We'll see when we're done. All right. Okay, I'm going to pause that. Get that right.
All right, I'll just get started with mine. Shorty lab report this week. I won't bore everybody's ears off the half hour today. Start the day off. May the 4th be with you.
Somebody did it. Good.
Yep. So happy 4th, everybody. Okay. My goals from last week were pretty gosh darn simple. To work on my projects, 2 projects that I have due this week. One is my 661 project, which is pretty much rolled into my big research, and the other is my 568 project, which is just simple fun GIS with GeoMedia. So let's go dive into it. Flights. We have full coverage of our sites for the first preliminary section.
Very nice. I like the visualization. That's great.
Yep. These don't quite match up. I'm just waiting for the final processing to come through. So these were the original grids we mapped, and the 300 by 300 flights, roughly around there, actually gave us a lot more overlap than we had originally intended. For example, this one, if you shift this one over just a little bit, Each one of those was a 300 by 300 flight. So we're actually getting about 350 by 350 in coverage. So we're getting a good 20 meters on each edge of really decent coverage. And that's not including the overlap side. Buttered them just so we'd have good overlap.
Okay.
So these ones we actually spread out a little bit more to see how they're going to go. There is, first, thank you to Mike for coming out and spending all day Sunday with me. And is it Sunday or is it Saturday?
It was Sunday.
Yeah, all day Sunday. We basically went out there and ran down both of our batteries twice trying to do stuff. So that was pretty kind of cool. So everyone has had its first stage in Pix4D process now. So I've got that first stage, and I've actually started about all of the lower ones here. I've run a full processing on just about, so I could actually see how they're coming out. And I've just done spot ones here, so I have something to use for my quick and dirty project.
So before you get too far, so one of the things I forgot to mention during mine was that I did look up the like the brass marker on the Lidar point cloud. It was off by a lot more than I thought. My composite that I did from the flights last summer. So my advice would be, but I checked it on Google Maps. I found the marker on Google Maps and pulled off the latitude and longitude, and that one was almost exactly what Corey had. So my advice would be to use Google Maps features that you can identify in each one to create just a couple of ground control points to get them to reference properly. I think it's going to save you a pile of time. And it was great. I mean, it was accurate to within a meter. Just pulling pixels off of Google Maps. But when you do that, make sure you choose something on the ground. So that's going to be, when they do the ortho imagery, they do it by ground transformation. But the building tops are going to be off, right?
Yes.
So don't use a building top. Use something that's on the ground. So like a street, right? Like the middle of a street intersection would be totally fine.
Okay.
And I don't think it's going to take more than a couple to get it right. You know, and you talked about that last week, right? Like,
yeah, I started talking about that, and that was
5 is probably plenty.
They said for
10.
They said to shoot for 5. 5 would give you pretty much the optimal time.
Okay.
And the time you spend in doing them, as opposed to actual benefit. I don't have pictures of that, but I actually did go through this week, and I actually started merging several of them together just to see how it's working. I was doing them with 5. I wish I had that image on that computer, but I don't.
5 what?
5 manual points. I did the manual ties. That's what I did.
Off of what coordinate? Oh, the manual ties.
Yeah,
but not ground control.
Not yet. Not ground control points. That's what I was going to try and work on next.
Okay.
For the manual ties, you tie the individual Pix4D first stages together. Let's see. Yeah, they're on this other computer. I was not prepared today, but I was doing 5 points within the imagery, and first pass came out really weird. I was getting some really weird angular distortion on the actual planes. The planes were shifted, but I re-optimized them a couple times, and they came out to be very beautifully arranged ones. So that's what I'm actually going to go through and over the next 2 days, or next day and a half. That's my plan, to get the rest of them all tied together in some big groups. That was working well. I need to, well, for my 661 project, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm dividing it up into 4 different portions. I'm going to do my portion here, of the new stuff, and then 1 and 2. I'm just going to take 40 random tree sample heights to run for my 661 analysis. I think a sample set of 40 in each. That gives me actual 4 different comparisons to the data set that Dustin has. I've been trying to figure out my variables in it, and the ones I've basically been able to come up with are flight height. They should be pretty similar, but I do have records of all the different flight elevations for each one. Illumination, so basically I'm going to be categorizing whether it's cloudy or sunny and see if that actually has a difference with it. And then I was thinking about putting in time of day. You know, I want to see if the shadowing, especially because Mike and I did some flights that were later in the day, and they really had some severe shadowing in it. So I wanted to see if that was actually going to show up in analysis. So I think I'm at a pretty good, well, should be talking about that later. I got ahead of myself. So yeah, so that's tying into the 661 project. So I'm going to try and follow Dustin's model eventually to get the individual tree heights. What I plan to do is I'm just going to use the actual LAS pixels. I'm not going to actually fully process those in that manner, but I'm going to take my highest pixel value in a area and then get my lowest pixel value area to try and get the difference between tree height and the ground level.
So my advice, I mean, that's what you should be doing for your thesis. If you're running short on time for 661 and you just want to compare 100 trees, you could make these manual measurements in less than an hour. So I would consider that a possibility. Just
that's what I'm going to do with these ones. I'm just going to go in and pick 40 points in each session and just measure between my ground plane and the tops of trees.
Well, I guess if you more trees, then you can cut it apart by things like illumination and whatever. Just think about that, because I think what you're going to find is the development of this algorithm is not going to go smoothly.
These for the 661 project, I'm just doing it down dirty.
Just manual?
I'm just doing a manual for this one.
Okay, perfect.
But as I was thinking about this, I was thinking about these are the types of things that I could actually try and discover in my later project.
Yep. Okay, good.
So,
and you've done those measurements in Cloud Compare before?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So for my 661 model, we do want to have some variables that we can test out, not just the.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, are these matching? Yeah.
Right.
But
so old and new neighborhood, and what were the other ones?
I want to do two, because there's different sections in each one of the neighborhoods. There's the northern section and the southern section in the old neighborhood. And so I figure that there's got to be some difference in development there. So I'm going to do a sample from each one of those. Okay. And then the two different new subdivisions, because they're different subdivisions, they're arranged a little bit differently. So
okay, and deciduous and you probably don't have enough conifers to really make that work. Huh?
Not really. There are some conifers, but pretty much everything I was trying to do was deciduous, especially since it's the leaf off measurement.
Okay. And you've got species too, so you can use that. Yep. So okay.
All of Dustin's trees had species attached with them.
Okay.
So I was thinking that was one of those wonderful things that will be in my data.
When is this due?
Monday. Woohoo!
All right.
So I've actually started writing the background, and now that I have Dustin's thesis, a lot of the things that was helping a lot. His full thesis, not just the article.
Great. Yeah, a lot had to get cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But just for my background information stuff, I've been looking up things, and yeah. So it's actually started. I was really stuck there with just trying to write, but it's coming now.
Good.
It's coming now. So yeah. Okay. Going back to that. Work full thesis, making creation of the processing model and my writing much easier. I'm starting to extract the heights. Now that I've gotten at least one of each of those sections fully processed to the third processing of Pix4D, I have the cloud or the point bases that I can actually work on that. Actually, second level. But I do have my 4 sample groups that I can actually start digging into and go in and do my manual extraction. I do have the LAS tools package installed on my computer now. I actually tried playing around with that during the week. Didn't quite work as well because I was trying to use it through the ARC interface. So that didn't quite work as well. I think I'm just going to start doing it in the actual LAS tools through the command line. That just seemed to be much easier. I plan to use some of Eisenberg's methods, not this week coming up, probably after I turn in my paper on Monday. Then I'll have lots more time to play with this. But I want to use some of his methods to try and scrub out the, especially to make my ground level. I really think the papers I read on him, I think those were going to work really, really well. I think that'll make that tree height elevation extraction so much easier. Graphics card. Got a new graphics card, and it is installed. It is the PNAY GeForce GTX 1050 Ti. We did run a sample run on our, the Quarry sample set, and it did decrease the processing time by about a third. So that was a nice little I was like, yeah, I was really happy with that. As I run some of the larger ones, I want to compare the ones I've already run to these ones and see if that benefit increases over those larger sets, which I think it's actually going to have a nonlinear benefit on those. So that's it in there. I did find a conference because Autocardo Symposium is just kind of pricey.
Yeah.
Even though I really want to go to it. But Upper Midwest Geospatial Conference, it's held up in La Crosse. I went to this one 2 years ago. It is another biannual one, same as Autocardo, so I don't know why they wouldn't have coordinated these two things together. But that would make too much sense.
People just kind of talk to each other.
Yeah, but it's... Anywho, it is a conference hosted by multiple state and regional organizations. Basically, the state GIS societies of Illinois, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Iowa are all participants in it. Then there's also some organizations like GITA is part of it. The ASPRS Western Great Lakes is part of it. Student registration is only $50, which is wonderful, but I'll spend the rest of that on a hotel anyhow. And they do have, well, they did last year, and it looks like, well, last time, and it looks like they're doing it again this time. They have open space for presentations. You don't actually have to register for posters or anything like that. You can just, they have a block of time set up that you can just walk in there, pop up your poster, and talk to people during some of the open mingling time. I think Matt's interested in coming along to that one since it's really close to his house. And there's some really, really cool people that I met there. I did run into people from ILGISA last time I was there. And I think I'll probably run into some more too because they're definitely one of the hosts of it. I think it's a really good thing to do, and I am telling Matt he should bring both of his poster and his map there.
Yeah.
They say they're going to have a contest this year. They just don't have any details out on it.
Okay.
So
yeah, might as well.
I'm trying to figure out if I can get something thrown together in 2 weeks after school is over to bring up there. Let's see, not really much more to talk about. So my goals for this week were to work on my class projects. For 661, I have the variables I want to test, I think. And I've decided what I want to extract. I know what my sample sets are going to be. I've actually started isolating out the trees I want to pull out. I'm trying to get a wide sample of them, spatially and species-wise, for my Geography 568 project. I have went through and downloaded some extra images just in case because they are shutting down Earth Explorer for the next several days, so there's going to be no... I don't know why they don't realize that finals are going on across the country right now at every university, so that's a horrible thing. So I've got that project all planned. I just need to do my line work now, which I really shouldn't have any problem with at all. I was actually working on that last night a bit. I'll show you guys that next week because I think it's going to be kind of cool. It's all about going to a Cubs game.
Okay.
Yay! Team is going to the Cubs, which I recommend everybody do. You need to go to one at least before you leave.
I've been to one game.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll try to go to another one.
Lab trip.
That'd be fun.
Lab trip. Cubs game. Okay. For the upcoming week, I have the meeting scheduled now. Everybody's going to be like, woo! I have my temporary third member, which will be Dr. Shagnon. He's agreed to be the placeholder in it. I've got the paperwork for him to sign. I'm going to send that to him. That's kind of good. I'm just starting to eat away at my insides with stress. He is actually, Dr. Allred says he would like to be on my committee. We have talked to Dr. Shagnon. Dr. Shagnon is actually forwarding the request up the chain of command to see if it will work. It may not because of Dr. Allred's status as technically just an instructor at the moment as opposed to a professor. So we'll see how that works. But either way, I think I have a good committee to go forward. The other thing about that was, though, do I need to switch you and Dr. Lowe to co-chairs?
It's not a bad idea.
Like do that on the same paperwork that I'm using to switch members.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. I asked Dr. James about that. So I will be finishing my paper on 661 over the weekend, and I will just be extracting my tree heights from points. The other thing was we started working on remote logging to the server, which I think could be a benefit to everybody. We got it started. I was able to log in briefly a couple times, but then like after about 30 seconds it kicks me out. So not quite sure what that is. I think I might be losing connection or something. So we've got a couple ideas of what we can do to maybe stabilize that connection. Just won't put those on video.
You know, one thing we could do is set up a virtual machine on it, and then set that up as the server. You wouldn't get access to the graphics card, but you would get CPU.
And if I'm not here, just process that. Just dump stuff.
Yeah. Let's see if we can get it working right, but we'll keep that in the back pocket.
Okay. So that's about all I have today, and I still managed to waste almost 20 minutes. Alrighty, May 4th, 2018, last official school week of the semester. Hurrah. That also means kind of the official completion, I guess, of the SES project. Official, but obviously we still be working on it, so yeah, looks good. So last weekend, along with Earle, we kind of took turns printing off the tiles.
It's a great photo.
High quality. You can thank Apple for that photo. What's his name? Cook. Send him an email. The other Cook, the Apple guy. The other one. So last weekend we started doing that. We had some issues on Friday and Thursday night as well. It's printing too fast, so we just ended up going. I kind of just noted it in here for future reference. We just went with the beginner settings or quick print settings for PLA, and then the only thing we switched under advanced was changing the base layer height to 0.5, and so that took longer than what you had printed the original ones at. That did work and printed fine, but for some reason it wasn't working now, or it was being sloppy. So we just took the time with these, and they all turned out great, except for the weird little node that popped up on the Student Center for some reason. But that was, we were just able to use a box cutter and scrape that off. So.
Oh, is that what you used?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah. Shaved it. Yeah. Nobody knows.
Perfect.
So that's all good to go. Yesterday, the last one was done. So we actually glued them onto the board there and cut that out. And we were able to, last night, Dr. Tingle and I do some testing with the camera that he talked about. That set up. And that was working, all things considered, well.
Yeah, by the end.
Yeah, by the end. So that turned out great.
Yeah, it's interesting. At this scale, we could really just like start looking at ways to put Braille on the top of these, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
I still want to try doing that with the thing that I found. So it's in a past lab report, so
Okay.
I'm really curious to see that turn out well, especially considering.
The code for TouchMapper was on GitHub, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So we could potentially look at a way to
You
fork
would
the
think,
code
yeah.
and
Right.
see if we can get it in there and then
Right.
fold it back in.
Yeah.
Make a real contribution, and then it would be
Right, because I think
distributable.
the code. There is a website for the Braille model creator, but I think that was on GitHub as well. So you should just be able to mash the two together.
Yeah.
Create something that'd be super cool. So that's kind of, I don't know, maybe that's what the little node on the Student Center is trying to tell us.
It's like, yep.
It's gonna work.
Well, especially if you guys can get some of the voice recognition going with Braille on top, that would be so user interactive.
Yeah. Right. I think there's a. I think going forward along with refining the laser, I think one of our major things is to try to, expand upon the full capabilities that it really has. It's a really powerful system, and we're just really scraping the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot left that can add to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, so. I think the cool thing about it too is that, obviously this isn't something that we created, just to restrict to this space or this campus. I think in the end, you already have stuff on GitHub, and allow people to use it in their home or at their business or something like that.
Yeah.
And so I think the nice thing about the code that, that at least the way that you've written it up is that, the stuff that you're pulling from OpenStreetMap can be changed and kind of tailored to however the end user wants it to, read out. So
I think my vision for this is to create a web page that can do all of it, right? So nobody needs to run anything. Like, it's just, the camera should be accessible via, cameras can be accessible via the web page. Certainly the text-to-speech stuff that you've already done. And that's it. And then we just need to figure out how to tie JavaScript into Python, which I've never done before, but it's done often.
Yeah.
So like the touch terrain people that did like the geographic models of like VEMs and stuff like that, their stuff is a web interface that talks to Python, and that's on GitHub. So we can use that as a model to maybe figure out how to
it'd be cool to see. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done with it yet, but I think that the culmination of what we've done over the past semester is create a really strong foundation going forward. So
we had invited people to come over for a tour at some point. So I think
after
Kayla,
so
Ranik, and
So I'll send them an email end of next week or following week. So last week, Sammy, who isn't here, was able to help me try to set up the reach, at least in the basic sense, trying to get it to work and connect, and, do what it's supposed to do, at least on the basic level. So special thanks to him if he watches this at some point, because he had a lot of background, knowledge going into this. He's looked into it before and kind of got caught in the hang up that together we were both able to solve. So we actually went outside and did some kind of testing with it, walked around and stuff, similar to what you did on the bike, minus the corrections and stuff like that, in base and rover mode. So everything worked fine. I kind of created a flow chart in here just for future reference if anyone wants to look back, as well as down there is like the Quick Start website, which is, it really explains it in a pretty good way. The only thing that it leaves out, but I put into here, is that you need to, either have it in like a windowsill, which can be kind of flaky, or take it outside when you first boot it up to make a connection. Otherwise, it doesn't really let you connect to it.
Yeah.
They don't really mention that on their things for some reason. I don't know if that's...
Well, interestingly, when I went through this, they were like, do not do this indoors. Don't power it on until, and like, I never knew why. I was like, this seems ridiculous. Why would I ever?
Right.
But I think my house is just wood, and I think, I was able to get enough signal that it never popped up.
Right. That's possible.
Yeah.
We got a few floors, I guess, to go through here. But I was able to get it to work in the windowsill. Probably not the best method, obviously, since there's a lot of stuff that's covered up. But in a general sense, I guess if you're kind of curious, you plug it in, you make the connection, whether you're outside or by a window. You connect your laptop or whatever device to that, because it's in like a hotspot mode, not connected to internet or anything. But then you can go into it. You then tell it to connect to either like your phone or any other campus-wide hotspot kind of deal. Then you switch to your laptop to whatever network you want. You reconnect to it by knowing its IP address, which you kind of have to track down. On the Quick Start guide, they do offer guides. There's an app that I actually have on my phone that lets you see the IP addresses of all things connected to your hotspot, so that's kind of useful. On Android, I think you can see them just right outright. I have Apple, so they're not going to provide that information always. But it's pretty simple. Pretty much the golden ticket here is you want your lights to be blinking white and green. Green is always good. We got some of us here doing mapping. But if you have that, that means everything's working out fine. If you go to that Quick Start guide too, there's another link on that site that has a description of all the other kind of light combinations, because that really tells you if things are going wonky and what to do about that. So, and then once you do all that, you end up with like a page like this where you can see all the GPS or all the satellites it's talking to, and you can begin to see position information, velocity, and then real-time track the location, and then also go in here to extract as you need. So today, actually, just now, completed the final SEF report. I got everything. It was all written, but getting everything signed and the expense reports and stuff, kind of a wonky little system. Printing stuff off, signing it, scanning it back in. But it should be all good to go. I'm about to send it off after this. At the time of writing this, I was still waiting on the final receipt for the order that Don had placed yesterday, but I got that. So all the receipts are taken care of. The budget is balanced, I guess, minus $30 for the drone parts. It's not a big deal. They also want me to submit it, or the paper, to the Husky Commons. I don't really know much about what goes on with that. And a repository.
Yeah, repository archive for the university.
Yeah, so I'll do that as well. So yeah, that's all taken care of. Kind of glad. I don't really like having to do. I mean, it's nice for like to do reports, but it just takes up time, I guess. But I think it's a good way to, I think, kind of touch on it too, to see what's going on and go back and pull information from it as well, along with the lab reports. So yeah, kind of the same kind of theory. Last night, as kind of mentioned earlier, I was able to witness a sort of codathon or something with Dr. Pingle, trying to integrate what I thought was the better laser detection system, created by some guy at, I think, MIT, or in conjunction in some way. So he was trying to, I was really mainly watching, trying to integrate that with the current camera-based system that we have. At least from the first iteration of implementation, it wasn't producing the results that we wanted. I do think, and I think you do as well, that I think that eventually, if it's all tweaked right, it should work at least as good, or if not better.
Yeah.
I think there's obviously, we didn't spend a ton of time on it.
We'll give it another go.
Right. But like he said in his report, we went back to the original laser detection system, looking for blobs and stuff, and we removed the area parameter, so it's not even searching for anything based on that. It's pretty much just searching, what was it, color?
I think it's just convexity. I think it's convexity around stuff.
Yeah, so, which is, I think I kind of allude to it here that, if this is in a fixed location, it's a white, background, our search parameters shouldn't need to be that complex. We're not trying to find complex shapes, like a hand or something.
Yeah.
It's literally a dot that is red, and it should stand out in stark contrast against a white background, regardless of the lighting conditions.
So, so another way that a lot of this kind of stuff works is with infrared. So the way people might do it is use like an infrared LED. Because if you think about it, we don't need a laser, right? We're not really doing it at a distance.
Right.
You could sort of, the instruction could be touch it to the surface, right? And then hit the button that turns it on. So it would fire up an LED, and then it could detect that. It might be redder, right? So that would be. But if you did infrared, then that's how people often do it, because that signal is usually not present. There's not an infrared emission like that.
Right.
So even if somebody's wearing a red glove, like it won't get confused.
Right.
So that could be something to kind of look at.
That's true. Yeah, that's something you can make out of.
But I don't know. That gets back to infrared cameras.
Yeah.
That's not really an option. So.
But strangely, by removing the area parameter, it was working pretty well.
Yeah.
Way better than the thing that we were trying to integrate, which had a lot of noise for some reason. But it wasn't coming up with any false returns.
Yeah. I think in a lot of ways, the distance, moving the camera back sort of acts like a filter of its own, right? Because it's you don't have that fine detail that I think is creating a lot of the false positives when it's close. So
yeah, so I think we're pretty close. It's definitely better than I think when the system had first been created and we were at the time of URAD.
Yeah.
there's still a lot of weird wonky stuff going on. You have to be in the dark. But I think right now it's in a decent, better spot. So,
Yeah.
Inching our way closer and closer to perfection. I guess I don't know. Like my goals page got cut off. So last week, I guess most of the goals that I had, all of them I really met. The biggest was getting the report done, get that all over with, completing the printing of the tiles, get that all glued together. That's all good to go. And then we were able to do a little bit of work on laser detection. So I know it's been a crazy couple of weeks for everybody. It was the end of the year, so I'm glad it's almost done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right.
All right, guys. Yeah, last one of the day for this Friday. Haven't presented to you in a while, so this is actually a lot of fun. So yeah, long time no present. But one of my main goals, I don't remember what any of my goals were from the last time I talked to you guys, but one of the big things that I had happen was my poster, my SAA Conference poster. There's a small thing of it for the PowerPoint. You guys can see the full printed out version back there. It was very well received. I got to talk to a lot of the big names out in Great Basin archaeology, and they had some interest. They had ideas to continue the project. One of the guys that I got a lot of information from actually wants me to continue working on this because it backs up some of the research that he has coming out this year. So I have another project that I have to keep going on for the time being, but I'm very happy with it. He's sending me. He's still working in the field doing some data collection. He's going to start sending me more sites with more information so that we can really get a larger sample size and see if this continues to hold and something different happens. So that was fun. Other good outcomes from the conference that I went to. We talked about Planet in class yesterday, but that was where I first learned about it for the high-res imagery. And there were, as applies here, they had a lot of other really cool sessions for using remote sensing, satellite imagery, and GIS. They had a whole session full of papers on it. Cool. And they had a lot of like edge detection, change detection, trying to auto-find features on the landscape, archaeological foundations and structures. Some really interesting stuff. So I can get you guys abstracts if you're interested in checking them out.
If you pursue sort of getting one of those accounts, I mean, did you create a free account? Have you access to any of the imagery?
I tried to download it, but I screwed it up yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, I'm really interested in circling back to that because it sounds like a really great data source. So I created an account. I haven't touched it yet, but if you do, I'd love to.
I created the account and I've already established myself as a researcher, so I have my 10,000 square kilometers that I can pull. If I had been smarter and set it up when I first heard about it, my whole study area in Peru is only about 15,000 square kilometers.
Okay.
I could have done the whole thing in high res.
Wow.
But that's okay. For now, what I've got is good enough, and we'll actually jump right into that.
Really interesting. So one of the projects that I worked on last year, I think I gathered the initial data maybe a year and a half ago, but maybe 2 years ago, was doing an image analysis of tornado scars. And we did drone imagery, but you can't get to that many, it's very expensive and time consuming to fly out a drone image a lot of these sites. So what I wanted to do is do some sites with the drone and then compare that to imagery like this to sort of see what you can do to extract, and using things like geomorphons to do the analysis. Anyway, with that much access to imagery, you should be able to do almost every tornado that goes through in a year.
Yeah, their strips that they give out they're fairly small, so there'll be a lot of pre-processing to stitch a big area together. But it's good because then you're not wasting your time downloading pieces you don't need, right? If a tornado goes that way, you can just follow it up. It's cool. I think we were looking at it, I think for the research right now, they're only getting up to 3-meter resolution. Is that what it was? So it's
still
not
pretty good.
I'm not.
How often is it imaged?
Every 24 hours, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Everywhere, every day.
Every day.
So it's wonderful.
Archive?
There is an archive online.
It goes back to 2015 when they launched. I actually it crashed. I was working with some people in remote sensing, And I actually had two people, I set up two people to start pulling up some imaging from it. And a couple of people actually use it in their projects now.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, we got to get on that.
It's yeah, I was not complaining on the 3 meter resolution. It's just for what they advertise, having some of it sub-meter accuracy. You know, that was a small disappointment. I'll take 3 meters over the Landsat 15 test any
that's
day.
amazing. How more? I mean, I'm just blown away that more people aren't using this. I mean,
Well,
that's
if you think about it, that's what 25 times more powerful than Landsat, because 15 by 15 can do 5 by 5.
I mean, I followed this. I saw that initial TED talk that I played at 459, and then they hadn't. I think it was like we're gonna do it, and then they didn't. You know, it wasn't out yet, and I kind of lost the thread. So wow, I'm glad that we kind of found it again. This is great.
It's up and going. For me to set up the researcher license for it, you put in that you're a student, sign up with it. They'll send you an email back and they ask for like what's your project that you're going to use it for? What are your qualifications? What have you been doing?
Yeah.
It was a real simple questionnaire. It took me about 45 minutes because I was pretty detailed.
Okay.
similar imagery because I did help two other people use it. One person was doing the hurricane aftermath in Houston, and oh my gosh, it was beautiful. Another one was doing one of the towns in the, like South by Joliet. He wanted to do impact of hail damage. So
yeah,
actually trying to look at it in the field. So we got some really good imagery out of that.
This thing is not going to go. Well, I'll try and open up the images I have over here. I know it's not going to be recorded. I'm sorry, but my PowerPoint crashed. I'm not happy with it. So, but with the next thing I was going to move into anyway is talking about my talk about the remote sensing aspect anyways. That's what it would be. It's just not my day for this.
Too pretty. These colors. See?
That's not even a tip. That's a PNG. These are the tips that I'm doing, and all they're showing you are different things. Anyway, let's see if I can start. So the first thing I had to do with these, the remote sensing project, I followed a couple basic steps, just to refresh everybody's memory for the recording there, if it restarts. I'm trying to look for, with remote sensing, I was trying to look for vegetation, high vegetation areas, basically high vegetation areas of water in my study area in Peru to base least cost paths off and give it some weights. So I started with the raw Landsat data, stacked the layers, ran an NDVI, but I'll get into that one there. Then I fused the images, ran a classification, and a change detection. So the first thing is stack the layers. That's where I was having so many problems with PowerPoint because those were raw tips. Each band comes as black and white. I don't know how much you know about remote sensing yet. So you stack them up in the process and you get your full band image, full spectral image. Landsat 8 comes with, what, 10, 11 bands? So all I needed was red, green, blue, and near infrared. Stack those four together, gives you a nice, pretty image that you can do the false colors on. With the false colors, I did the normalized difference vegetation index. I'm only showing the April photographs here, but I did this for both April and September. That's what gave me my change detection aspect. These are just the Aprils. You can see the really bright areas where you have healthy vegetation. But when I was trying to do a change detection on the NDVI images, I wasn't happy with the results. Because in the classification, you need in the pre-classification, you need a really strong spectral signature, and classifying one band just wasn't working well enough. So I went back to the full band photos, fused them. So what you get with that's another tip. What you get with Landsat, you get the raw data, which is the multispectral data, which is a 30-meter resolution. You get a panchromatic band, which is a 15, and then you can fuse them together using some resampling techniques to get the 15-meter full color image, but you lose some data in there. But it's all right. It works for what I need. After that, I went into the supervised classification, wherein I specifically selected my own training sites. Did 6 classes because I was having trouble with anything fewer. The main ones I wanted, if they're interested in, water, vegetation, and lomas, which are like ephemeral growth vegetation down in Peru in the lowlands. But they can get to be very lush. So if you find areas where they remain kind of persistent, it's a good indication of ground moisture. The throwaway classes were snow and clouds because I had a lot of cloud cover just off the coast and snow up in the highlands. Lowland terrain, which came out this gray area, and then the highland terrain, the darker gray area. This is on the left, you have the raw classification data. That's just a stretch spectrum. Yeah. Just on the stretch classification. I went through and I picked out all the pixels that I didn't care about because it'll give you like one class to another. And all I really wanted was what stayed water, what stayed loess, what stayed vegetation. So when I extracted those pixels, these are the areas I got. And when you overlay that, you can see where they last on the landscape. Did that for both sets of photos, or did the classification for both photos. This is the changes from April to September. So that gave me some areas of interest, which I'll be using moving forward into my response paths, which is a good segue into those. I also, with ARC, I did some raster calculations to find basins, flow accumulation in the drainage channels through there, and something else I don't remember. But now, with Matt's help, so I'm beginning to produce some weighted overlays. Tried some last night. They didn't work too friendly. I got mostly blank raster, so I need to figure out what I did wrong. But it's going to be fun. I'm going to work on that next week. It's one of my goals. The next major steps, I want to combine the change detection, GIS, raster analysis, all those rasters together. Try the weighted overlays of those, and then start looking at slope and aspect and trying to just build up and up and up and up. To get the ultimate LCP, just trying to get survey areas. That's all I want. And that's not my main focus in the last week or so. Getting those kind of put together. And since semester's ending, it's going to be one of my big focuses moving forward. I did want to share this, and I wanted to share this for a while. Mavic has there's a company that makes a Mavic multispectral system. It runs about 800, I think. And it just hooks on the front, the kind of nose cone, and they come with this whole, this is the calibration kit behind it. You set that down, you can get the full near infrared, and I can just email you. Yeah. Well, it's in the
link is there. Yeah.
It's in there now. So, but yeah, they sell this full system as a multi-spec camera. But I was thinking about it, since you already have a fairly good red, green, blue on the Mavic itself, you can buy just an infrared camera. And then you should be able to merge them in post-processing, which we really need. But it could be a fun system, fun to play with. Drone flights, thanks to Earle for letting me get out. And it was more fun to get. It's fun for me to get out. So. And then this is another thing that I got done this week at Kurt's request. This is a fellowship for the Cultural Heritage Informatics at Michigan State. And it's basically trying to apply informatics and digital archiving, digital projects to the humanities. And they have positions available. It comes with like a 2,000 per semester stipend, I think, with travel and with processing hardware allowances. And it's a really wonderful program. So with all the digital, work I've done on Peru research anyways, trying to feed that in and continue the project at Michigan State and see what I can do. And then hopefully maybe even bring in some of the modeling that I've been working with you guys and really improve it, give them something they'd be happy with. And I put the link in, put the link in there. They have a lot of cool things that they've been doing. There was a historian who did the real winning of the bicycle development age, so female bicycle mechanics of the early 1900s, which was super cool to read through. Since I like bikes and all
All the drivers end up in this movement.
that. Yeah. And they had a mortuary study where they were talking about excavating an old unmarked graveyard. Talking about some of the archaeological excavations they've done. So it's a cool project. And some of the requirements for like to maintain a blog and produce, I think it's a publication at the end of it. So I'm hoping to get that and just have some fun with it. Next week, finals. I really have to get back to a spreadsheet that Kurt wants done. I want to keep working on the weighted overlays and the least cost paths. And then if I have time, I want to download some of the planet imagery and see if I can apply that to what I've already done. Maybe if I can get someone to open up the geography lab for me, do some of that.
What do you need the geography lab?
EarthS Imagine or faster processing. My compute, the stuff that I'm starting to do, this is bogging out. So the other thing that I was for the next couple weeks, it's upcoming. My dad's going to come visit, so if you guys are hanging around, I'd like to show him this because this is where I've spent most of my time this semester. And kind of show, he's been really excited about the drone work, especially. So. And that's all I got. Sorry, my PowerPoint kind of crashed.
That's all right.
Really sad.
See if we can.
Well,
I was trying to see if I could just flip through it as you were going.
Oh, there's one more TIFF in there that I can take out that should bring it to a manageable.
Okay. Yeah, just re-upload it when you're done.
Yeah, I'll play with it in just a moment.
Stop the video.